mental health. And I just thank you for joining me again. If you haven't seen the previous ones, go back in the feed and you can see what we talked about previously. We had an overview of mental health sermon on Sunday, and then yesterday we talked about rest. And tonight, I want to talk to you about the stigma that is attached to mental health. When I was growing up, we only identified mental disorders. And so there are some people in, my intent is not to offend anyone. I hope, I don't. We had some people that the church would say, well, they're a little different. We had some people that people would say, well, they're a little slow. And what that meant was that they had a mental disorder or disability. But for everyone else, they were regular people. And we treated the people who had a mental disorder or disability as irregular. And I think our society, even our church, is realizing everyone is susceptible to mental breakdown. Everyone is susceptible to mental health events, because we live in a broken world. And so all of these things can compile on us. And we're also dealing with spiritual warfare that will feed us thoughts that aren't even our own thoughts, but will feed us thoughts. Oftentimes people with depression, for example, will describe it as a cloud over them. Everything is negative. They lose interest in things. They're not even their own, but yet these thoughts are inhabiting their brains and their minds, and it's what they're thinking about. And so it's always a shock when we see someone take their own life. It's always a shock when we find out someone was in the hospital. Even if they go to the hospital, they keep it hush hush about what they went to the hospital for. Like you just assume that they're sick. Like, oh, what was wrong with them? And they don't say, well, I had a mental breakdown. I had one. I was in the hospital for several days. And I know I was afraid to call my job and tell them I am having a mental breakdown. Let's call it what it is, a mental breakdown. To the point that I didn't want to live. And I got to the hospital, and they, did some blood work and found out that my pituitary gland was releasing some enzyme that was helping for me to feel worse than I was already feeling. I wasn't in a good place in life. I would say the trajectory of my life was going very different than I expected it to go, that I wanted it to go, that I felt like God was ordaining me to go. And it was hard for me to deal with. And then on top of me being in the mental thought process, the stress and the agony of that, my body started reacting to it to make me feel even worse. So I went from feeling sad to wanting to kill myself drastically, to the point of uncontrollable anger. I ended up having to go to court because I heard I threw a monitor at a sheriff deputy. I don't remember this, but it's real. Luckily, when I got better and when I got healthier through counseling, and I was able to apologize to that sheriff deputy. Fortunate enough that I didn't get shot and killed. Fortunate enough that the DA and the judge were willing to work with me and understand that what was going on, and so I didn't do a lot of jail time. They arrested me that night, but then they had me go to a mental health facility, and where I was able to be treated. And we don't talk about that. I've been ashamed to talk about it. But in not talking about it, I can't help anyone who might go through or who is dealing with those things. I can't help in not talking about it. I'm really doing God a disservice because he didn't bring me through it to not tell anyone. He didn't heal me. He didn't cover me. He didn't strengthen me so I could keep it a secret. That's not how he worked. He brought me through it so I could praise him, and in praising him for doing so, I can free someone else, knowing that there is a God that even can deal with that situation. God cares about our mental well-being, and throughout time, there's always been a stigma. And we have the ability in this generation, and maybe, in years coming, and I see it going in that direction. I'm hoping it's going in that direction, where it can no longer be such a stigma that when you need help, you can ask for help. Right now, as we stand, there isn't enough mental health facilities. There aren't enough mental health professionals, which is one thing that keeps people away from getting the help that they need. Another thing is oftentimes there's a big cost associated with it. A lot of insurance plans don't cover mental health. If you happen to be a lawmaker and you're seeing this, by all means, something you may want to address. If you are a healthcare professional and you do know where services are, feel free to leave that in this chat. Feel free to send that out to people, because there are people who either don't know where to get help or are still afraid of getting help or afraid of the cost. If there are any free resources, please, please, please put that in these comments. Put it in there. I don't know when people are going to see this, but put it in there so that we people can get help. I was certainly fortunate. I want to read to you a passage, Mark 20. Then he went home, and the crowd gathered again, so that they could not even eat. When his family heard it, they went out to seize him, for they were saying, "He is out of his mind." And the scribes who came down from Jerusalem were saying, "He is possessed by Beelzebub, and by the prince of the demons he cast out the demons." So you see there, even Jesus was said to be out of his mind. He's casting out demons and helping people, and people are like, he's out of his mind. The stigma has always been there. And unless we make it acceptable, number one, as a church, and not just friendship, just as a Christian community, until we make it acceptable that people can ask for help, number one, and number two, that we're willing to talk about the time that we needed help, the stigma is not going to go away. We are all susceptible to mental events and mental breakdowns. And then some of us get to the point of having mental disorders and mental illnesses. And it's not that there is no help available. Sometimes there isn't enough help available. Sometimes we don't know where the help is available. Sometimes there's just a fear of being judged. And then sometimes we have the old mentality of just pick yourself up by your bootstraps. Not everybody can. So I want to continue this conversation. What can we do to get rid of the stigma? If Jesus was called crazy, who am I? And if I am going through a mental event, who am I to not get help? Like, subscribe, post, repost. Let's have this conversation. Feel free to message in the comments. And God bless you. We'll see you tomorrow.